Hi, everyone. This is an overview of Chapter 5 from 13 Theories of Human Nature, and the topic is Aristotle. So what do we know about Aristotle? Well, he lived from 384 to 322 BCE in Greece. He was Plato's student, and he was Alexander the Great's tutor. He opened the Lyceum, which was a rival to Plato's Academy, and he was charged with blasphemy. Just like Socrates, but unlike Socrates, he chose to flee instead of face his fate. Okay, his metaphysics. What do we know about Aristotle's metaphysics? Well, he disagreed with his teacher, Plato. He said that forms are not transcendent, but in the things themselves. So he didn't posit this additional dimension called the realm of the forms where we have these things. He believed that these forms existed right here on Earth in the things themselves. So physical objects are made of physical matter and organized form, matter and form. And if we take a human being as an example, a human being is just matter in human form. But that raises the question, what is form, especially in light of what Plato had to say about forms? And so to understand this, we need to look at causation, or the four causes. So Aristotle had four causes, and the first one is a material cause, or the stuff that something is made of. The second is a formal cause, or the form that the thing takes, or the idea of the thing. The next is the efficient cause, which is that which brought that thing into existence. And the final cause is a thing's purpose or function. So let's go back using an example of, say, a table. A table made of wood has a material cause of wood. The wood is the material cause. The formal cause of the table is the idea of the table in the mind of the carpenter. And the efficient cause of the table is the carpenter. The final cause of the table would be the purpose of the table, which is to put stuff on, right? To eat your dinner off of and the like. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit more about final causes because this might be a new idea to you. This brings up the word telos, or teleology. A telos is a thing's purpose, function, goal, or final end. And so for Aristotle, he takes a teleological view of nature. And so he thinks of all things in the universe as having purposes. For example, you might talk about the telos of a heart, which is to circulate blood. You might talk about the telos of rain, which is to water the plants. You might talk about the telos of plants, which is to feed animals, or the telos of an acorn, which is to become an oak tree. Now, in biology these days, we don't talk about these things in this way. This is because of Charles Darwin, but it's still common to refer to things like the heart and talk about its purpose, right? But that raises a bunch of philosophical questions on purposes in the universe. So Aristotle thinks that knowing the function of an object allows us to determine its success. So take the table again. If you know the function of a table, what it's there for, what its final cause is, then you can tell whether it's a good table or not. If it has a wobbly leg or only has 3 legs, then it's not a good table. It is not successful at being a table. And the final cause of the whole universe is God for Aristotle. Aristotle also thinks that there is such a thing as a soul, and he divides the souls into 3 different types. You got the rational soul, which is unique to human beings. You have appetitive souls, which are unique to animals, and you have nutritive souls, which all plants, actually animals and human beings, have as well. In fact, I misspoke. We also have appetitive souls. So this picture before you would be the picture of the human being, having rational souls, appetitive souls, and nutritive souls. Plants and animals only have either the appetitive souls or the nutritive souls. So what about human function or human end? He says in the Nicomachean Ethics, Book 1, do the carpenter and the leather worker have their functions and actions, but has a human being no function? Is he by nature idle without any function? Or just as eye, hand, foot, and in general, every bodily part apparently has its function, may we likewise ascribe to a human being some function apart from all of these. So he thinks that the human being does have a telos, does have an end, does have a function, and he says it's this. We have found then that the human function is activity of the soul in accord with reason or requiring reason. And so going back to the souls that we talked about on the previous slide, since the rational soul is that which is unique to human beings, then it must be the purpose of a human being must be have something to do with exercising that soul capacity, which is reason. So reason, what is the rational soul? There are two types of reason. Actually, there are more for Aristotle, but these are the two main ones, Sophia and phronesis. So he divides wisdom into theoretical wisdom and practical wisdom. Theoretical wisdom is what you're doing in this class right now, studying a subject, getting knowledge about a subject. Phronesis or practical wisdom is knowledge of how to live well, how to make decisions in life. And I hope that's happening also in this class, but it may not be. Next is eudaimonia. So when we're talking about human nature, we're talking about in the chapter, the diagnosis and the prescription, we have to talk about it for Aristotle, eudaimonia, which is sometimes translated as happiness. But for Aristotle, it's much more than just a state of mind. When we say happiness, we talk about a feeling, right? It's a state of mind. But for Aristotle, it's a holistic state of affairs. It's a holistic state of being, not just how you're feeling at any given moment, but are you in fact flourishing? Are you in fact successful as a human being? And so that's the type of happiness we have in mind. Are you a thriving, flourishing human being? And so he thinks that eudaimonia is that what it is to be a thriving human being, to live a full life. But how do we live a full life? What does that kind of life look like? And this is where the moral virtues come in. The moral virtues are those things that are needed in order to flourish as a human being. And there are lots of them in the Nicomachean Ethics. I've only given a few of them here. Some of them I've just come up with on my own. But courage, honesty, loyalty, generosity, and humility. So Aristotle thinks of the virtues as golden means, meaning they are means between two extremes. You've got the vice of excess on the left there and the vice of deficit on the right. And so for every virtue, or for most of them at least, you can identify the vices on either side. And if you're given just the virtue or one of the vices, you should be able to determine what the missing ones are just by knowing how this table works. So for example, courage. If you have the excess of courage, you have too much of this thing we call courage, then we call you reckless, right? That would be the vice. A reckless person is someone who just has too much of this stuff. On the other side, if you lack courage, then we have a word for that, and it's cowardice, right? And so the virtue or the ideal is right in the middle. And so as far as a diagnosis is concerned, if we lack happiness, if we are not flourishing, it's because we lack the virtues here. And so the ideal then is what we're after, is to find the mean between these extremes in our lives. The next one is honesty. So for example, if you have too much honesty, then you're just a little too blunt, right? You should keep your mouth shut a little bit more. And if you lack honesty, then you're a liar. And that's bad too. We want to be honest people, and that's to find the middle ground. You can be loyal too. That's a good thing, being loyal, but you can also be too loyal, right? You can just be blind. It can be blind obedience, but also you can be disloyal on the right. That's a deficit. Generosity, can you be too generous? I think so. We might call that extravagance. You can also be not generous enough, and so you're stingy. So these are the words that would fit into the boxes on either side. Humility, you can be humble, that's a good thing, but you can also be too humble, right? Never taking credit for anything you've done. It would be a form of self-hatred, I think. On the other side, probably more commonly, we know the deficit of humility is arrogance. So this leads us to virtue ethics. And this doesn't get much discussion in the chapter, but I thought it'd be useful here. So virtue ethics is a theory of moral rightness based on character. So according to virtue ethics, the right thing to do is what the virtuous person would do in your situation. And you can either ask a virtuous person if you know one, or you can imagine what a person who embodies all of those previous virtues would do. All right, I hope that was helpful.